you'll start off, Shannon, just by talking us through your background, maybe in 2 or 3 minutes,
Yeah,
of the role
yeah.
that fitness and exercise played in your childhood and how that led you onto your Olympic path.
Yeah, so I never wanted to be an athlete as a kid. I grew up in the 80s, and the only sports that were on television were basketball, baseball, and football, all which had incredible athletes, but they were all men. So I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And as a young kid with big dreams, I knew I wanted to try to be as best as I could be at something, maybe even the best in the world at something. But I knew that those weren't realistic for me because I was a girl. And so I actually started out in dance, and I began Irish dancing in kindergarten at the age of 5. I had broken my leg, and my grandma put me in Irish dancing to strengthen my bones, and I fell in love with it. I did a bunch of things as a kid, but it was really dance that had this creative combination of, um, or this combination of creativity, music, culture. It was Irish dancing, and I'm Irish by heritage. But interestingly, Irish dancing also has a competitive aspect. And so, um, kind of, I unknowingly at the time, but making sense in retrospect, was really gravitating towards things where I could have this clear or somewhat clear definition of where I stood, which could then give me the feedback on ways that I could improve. And so, luckily, Irish dancing developed these sort of competition, performance under pressure kind of skills, as well as these physical traits of fast twitch development and posture, and just general fitness, that then freshman year in high school, when after the first day of orientation, as a kid who wasn't good at sitting still, I decided I would try out cross country because my friends were doing it. And I remember mistakenly thinking that running would be easy because I'd always been told I was quick. And of course, it's one thing to be quick; it's another to be a consistent contender. So, you know, but I had a natural talent. My dancing background really helped support that, and it was in high school that I began running and found my greatest success. I ended up getting a full athletic scholarship to Duke, where I ran cross country, indoor and outdoor track. At the time, I had no idea professional running existed. I came from a family where my dad was a union foreman. My mom was a secretary who worked her way up to be an event planner, like both very hardworking people that taught me these innate skills of, you know, find the thing that you love, work hard at it, and that's how you'll have your most success. But professional athleticism as a runner was not something I aspired towards. Although I grew up and the Olympics was the one time that I could see women and girls doing things that were incredible and inspiring. Um, Fortunately, along the journey, both in high school and in college, I had coaches who kind of imagined more for me than I ever thought was possible. And so I chose Duke because I could get a great education, thinking I would need to find another career after, or find a career after college. Turns out that career became professional athletics, and I started running for Nike in 2007. I am now over 15 years into my relationship with Nike and transitioning out of professional athletics into what seems like more of an ambassador relationship, where I can, through my nonprofit, Imagining More, hopefully, help kids imagine more for themselves when they think about their future. And I currently work at a sports tech startup focused on the women's sports space, trying to think of innovative ways to tell stories of athletes, and to get them sponsorship.
Great. Before we get too far along, let's take care of the housekeeping of making sure we get your nonprofit URL out there if you want to say that out loud.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it's imaginingmore.org. We've been around since 2012, but most of our projects have been pretty small and pretty local. It was co-founded by myself and my husband, Pablo Solares, who is Mexican, actually the Mexican national record holder in track and field in a few events. And so now that I'm kind of transitioning out of professional competition, really trying to invest in this San Francisco and Bay Area community, and hopefully create resources, create events that can educate and inspire our youth and our coaches.
Cool. And you might have specifically not mentioned the name of the startup if it's in stealth mode, but if you can tell us a little more about and
no,
especially
thank you.
Go ahead.
So the startup I'm at is called Parity, and it's been around since 2016. But we started our kind of community building. We have about 800 professional women athletes who have joined the Parity community, and we work with them to find opportunities for social media marketing, influencer marketing, NFTs, and I'm the director of NFTs at Parity.
Awesome. Awesome. So you've mentioned a few times how it was impactful for you to first have an absence of people who looked like you on TV, and the presence of people who looked like you on TV, and now this other business that essentially empowers female athletes. Can you talk just a little bit about that experience and the importance of representation and inspiration that can come from that?
Absolutely. I think I've had a lot of years to reflect on my journey, and it's sort of only in retrospect that I've been able to connect some of those dots. So I think at Duke, my master's was in focused on women's studies and film studies. And at the time, I remember that was 2006, 2007. It wasn't a catchphrase. It wasn't really something trendy, but there was this my master's thesis was the history of women's sports at Duke. And I think I was constantly trying to understand how is it that I had this life trajectory of athletics when I definitively did not want to be an athlete. I saw no attraction towards it. And it was only through my experience, I think there were a couple moments, one of which was, I think in 2014, I was competing at indoor nationals in track and field. And I won back-to-back races, and I had done so wearing lipstick in a race, which on the surface is nothing at all noteworthy or newsworthy. But it became a talking point, and there were multiple articles about the fact that I had worn lipstick in a race, and then spiraling from that, opinions on whether athletes shouldn't wear lipstick, which to me got me thinking about what is an athlete, and really reflecting on the fact that this idea of athlete has been defined for millennia by a very specific type of persona. Generally a male attributes. Even when you think about swifter, faster, stronger, higher, faster, stronger, it's measuring more of these male traits. But as women have participated more, as people from different backgrounds have participated more, there's more diversity in athleticism, but we're not necessarily telling those stories. And we kind of try to keep people in this vision of what an athlete was, not allowing for space of what an athlete can be. And so, like I had mentioned, I was fortunate that I had family members and mentors along my path that imagined more for me than I thought was possible. I thought, that's an athlete, I'm not that, let's find something else to pursue. But between their encouragement and now my own kind of conviction to kind of create more space and create more opportunities, it's really important to have those trailblazers that maybe can think bigger than we're currently able to, and create that opportunity for others to then come along on the journey with us. And so I think representation, I think representation is probably a fundamental part of the work that I do and that motivates me, without necessarily calling it that, but just trying to create space for more people and more stories.
Great. You hit on something that one of your contemporaries once told me, Erica McLean, who said, if you have a body, you're an athlete.
Yes. I think that as someone going through this journey myself, from professional athletics, where all my training was dictated to me, to mother of two. My son is 6 months old. And uh, you know, what is my relationship to being active? I mentioned I was never one that could sit still. And I also say I meditate through movement. I think that it's our bodies are meant to, you know, we have our mind and our body, and the two kind of working together is when we're at our best. And I think finding ways for people to make the most out of the gifts that they've been given in this life, whatever they are, is, I think, what life is all about. And so, you know, if you have a body, you're an athlete. I think it's a challenge to everyone. It's an encouragement to everybody to, you know, find that thing that gives you inspiration, that gives you health, that is absolutely free and completely nourishing, and to really, you know, make time and space for that.
Cool. So you've now wandered into Fit Kids' wheelhouse in terms of you know, really making sure that health and fitness is for everyone, physically, socially, emotionally, and just in terms of like what it even means to be alive, you know, to despite even trying circumstances, especially for underserved youth, still be able to do this if you've got some guide, some inspiration. So can you talk a little bit about coaching, and especially the mentality of the coach, teacher, athletic director, school principal, or whoever in the Fit Kids ecosystem? What kind of messaging should they be providing to kids to make sure those kids are moving, even if they are obese, even if they are not interested in sports, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that, because I think that the role a coach plays is so essential and fundamental in the way that our athletes, especially when they're like the first coach that someone has, can really dictate their life path, right? I think so. Before getting into that, I will say, to our point before, you know, especially for an underserved person, but any person, having a having health and fitness, having activities is the best way for to de-stress, to clear your head, to come up with inspiration, and it's absolutely free. And beyond that, it can build relationships and community. My husband is a fellow athlete that I met on the racing circuit. I'm still friends with my high school coach, is still a mentor for me, and all of my closest relationships have come through my athletic journey. And so I think, you know, for someone who doesn't have a lot of money, finding a physical activity is a way to give them the gift of like long-term health, mental and physical. But when it comes to coaches, I really credit, you know, my first two coaches, and especially my high school coach, for the foundations that they laid. I think, you know, it's possible to say my high school coach, his name's Andy Chan. He still coaches at my high school, Sacred Heart Cathedral. He's the godfather to my son. He's been a very impactful person in my life. It's possible to say that he saw Olympic potential in me as a kid, but I don't even know about that. I think he saw collegiate potential as I progressed through my high school career, but he was never trying to get success out of me for his own glory. He was always trying to think about me and my long-term development, and how could I be the best athlete possible, the best person possible by my senior year, with a foundation that could then translate into college. And how could he set me up for success on the next phase? He respected the fact that his time with me as a high school coach was a phase where he was the custodian of that time, and he was trying to create a path forward for my future. And it was because of that attitude that, you know, I was able to go into the college space and really commit to that experience, rather than feeling torn between a high school coach that couldn't let go and a collegiate coach who was trying to coach me. It was also because of that, you know, despite how much I've traveled or how frequently we do or don't talk, Andy has always been a person that I respect and admire and will count in my corner. Because, as I said, it wasn't about him. It's always about each person he's working with, and how do I help them achieve what they're capable of. I think as well, it's for these coaches understanding what that child's potential is, and introducing it to them at a pace that is healthy, and bringing their families on board as well. You know, you have to have this, like, and that family might be biological or it might be a support system, but whatever it is, creating community around these kids, because no one person can do it alone. And the more love and support a child has, the more likelihood they have to succeed. So I think about my college coach at Duke, Kevin Germain. I think he saw that there was the potential I could be a professional athlete, but he knew that I needed to kind of warm up to the idea. So he helped create opportunities where I could dip my toe into that professional racing circuit, during a redshirt season, for example, and see how I liked it, and start like kind of having these little carrots or planting these little seeds. But ultimately, it needed to be my decision, because if you want success in anything, you have to be willing to put in the work and make the sacrifices to be successful. So when I think about coaches, it's about, looking at these athletes, looking at these kids you're working with, really seeing them for who they are and also for what they're capable of, and helping to guide them, during whatever part of that journey you have the privilege of being present for.
That's beautiful. That's an awesome tribute to your coaches. And I hope that so many of the folks involved in Fit Kids can heed that, especially the part about seeing the kids' potential and not necessarily trying to get the most out of them athletically, certainly for the coach's own glory. I'd also be interested if you've got any specific advice, and this almost comes down to kinetics. If a coach can see that a kid who is, clearly not cut out for stick and ball sports, what attributes would they be looking for in that kid to try to guide them to something different, whether it's Irish dance or anything else?
Well, I would say for running, I can speak to running. I personally, for my own kids, would prefer if they didn't start running, like, kind of focused on running specifically until they were high school age. I think within track and field, and maybe the field events where there's a little bit more specific skill training that you need to have, it could be a different timeline. But I would say for middle distance to distance running, the more important thing is to be generally fit, to be coordinated, and to have that, mental maturity to handle, the challenges that running will throw at you. Because at the end of the day, running is like athletics. The word athletics originated in running, this just pure physical fitness, which is really cool to say, but what it comes down to from a practical standpoint is you're doing a lot of repeats. There's a lot of grind. There's, I would have maybe 15 to 20 races a year as a professional athlete, but 365 days of training with, sometimes double days. Obviously I built up to that. I wasn't there when I started, but once you sort of set that benchmark of a personal best, whether it be in a workout or a race, then anything less than that feels like you've fallen short, and you're just constantly trying to raise that bar, and that can become really emotionally taxing and potentially lead to physical choices that are not the healthiest, whether it's overtraining, eating disorders, all of those things, as an attempt to kind of reclaim this bar that you've set for yourself. So within track and field, as I said, I think, to be training very vigorously in running, I would suggest waiting until later date, but really encouraging your child to try different sports and find what sticks. In my own experience, I remember I played basketball once it was available at my elementary school, and quickly discovered that hand-eye coordination was not my strong suit, but foot coordination was, and sort of self-directed myself towards the areas where I had kind of a natural propensity. And so, I think there's this balance between sometimes kids just need a little bit more specific skill training, and sometimes kids maybe might be able to find more success somewhere else. And, reading each scenario in that way. But but once again, if we come back to what's best for the kid and for their development, then hopefully you can give them advice that comes from a, a place of care, and then ultimately it's up to the kid and their parent to decide what to do, but really trying to start from that place.
You mentioned before meditation through movement. Can you expand on that a little bit and explain specifically what that feels like to you physically and mentally and emotionally?
Yeah. What I love about running, and I would say it applies to walking for me as well. This, I say meditation through movement because it's through that, as a high energy person, that stimulus of walking or running kind of that helps bring me to a level of calm. I can sit and I can work on projects in a very focused way, but I love to get up and I love to move, and because I also, more often than not, when I go out for a run, I'm not connected. I leave my phone, um, either, well, I'll carry it with me if I'm somewhere unfamiliar, or I'll leave it so I don't have it. Um, but I'm not trying to be connected to the world. It's the one time when I can just let my mind wander. Um, and my body kind of comes to this really quiet place where I can just hear my thoughts and I can think creatively about all the different data points I've had throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year. Um, and so I think it's a chance for that peace and quiet that allows, whether it's relaxation or revelation. It's that's my time of the day that I can really find, just, I think, find my potential, or like be what I figure out what I need to then go forth and do what's next.
Great, thanks for that. And how does that translate to a kid? I mean, Fit Kids work with people as young as 4 or 5 years old, um, and they're not going to understand everything that you just said, but there's got to be ways to cultivate that within youth. Can you talk about how that might work out?
Yeah, I mean, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and I've seen the days when she's been able to be out and active and how it translates into her personality at home. And I see the days where she's been stuck inside, um, without a good outlet. Often being stuck inside for too long can lead to some kind of screen time as well. And so I think I think our kids are very much like me, if not more so, where it's like they're not great at sitting still. They need movement. They need stimulus. And if they can't get it through movement, they're going to find it through something else. And so I think creating fun environments where they can learn the joy of movement, and especially ones that are encouraging them to interact with their peers. Um, they can build. I think I personally love co-ed scenarios too, where kids can learn to have healthy conversations, between genders, and I think that that's a really great developmental tool for the long term. And I think that there's ways to introduce important concepts of sports to kids early in a way that's still fun. I remember in PE class at my elementary school having hurdles, as one of the activities one day, and I thought it was so cool. And there was a time I was trying out the steeplechase as an event. I think if I had started it younger in life rather than in college, it might have been an event that I explored more. And so I think there's just so much value to be had for our kids in being active and teaching them as early as possible, this healthy relationship with movement and being fit and active.
Great. We've got just a few minutes left, and I certainly want to hear more about the Olympic experience, particularly just what it meant to you and what some of your reflection was in the moment, whether after completing a competition or even just the achievement of being named to the team. So if you would reflect on that a little bit and tie that back to your childhood.
So my first Olympic team I made was in 2008, and it was meaningful for many reasons. uh, most of course, achieving this dream that I don't even know if I thought was possible as a kid of being an Olympian, something that is really the pinnacle of our sport or of sports, and of like kind of human bodies. What was also really special about that, making that team, was that 1 year before, I had my collegiate athletic career had ended prematurely when I had a stress fracture in my left femoral neck. So a pretty serious injury, and really the first major injury of my career. Um, and so I think, the moral of the story was this huge disappointment led to what ultimately was kind of my biggest, greatest success at the time. And the learning lessons that came from it, and the confidence it gave me. And I'll share some of those. It's when I was diagnosed with my stress fracture in 2007, 1 year out from the Olympic trials, I had making that Olympic team as my goal, which meant that I had to be really thoughtful and diligent about my recovery process. I think a lot of athletes, they get injured and they're trying to rush back as quickly as they can to fitness. For me, with the severity of the injury and with the timing, there was nothing to rush back for. So instead, I took a slower approach, which ultimately served me very well in the long term, which was give myself the time I needed to fully recover, have a very slow and thoughtful return to exercise, from swimming to elliptical and stationary bike to, jogging to working out, that took maybe 3 or 4 months. But also getting to the foundation of the injury in the first place. So understanding, with a stress fracture, that's a chronic injury. That means that there's something that you're doing consistently and repeatedly that is causing these micro traumas that then build up to the point of a severe injury. So that meant that there was something to kind of get to the bottom of. For me, I have a leg length difference that dates all the way back to that broken leg in kindergarten. My leg grew back a little bit longer. And I remember initially thinking, gosh, if only I hadn't have had that injury, or that, if I hadn't broken my leg, everything would have been peaches and cream. The reality is, and I've seen this in my career, every single athlete has their Achilles heel. And the sooner that we can identify what that is and start taking steps to mitigate it, to strengthen it, to balance it, whatever it is, the sooner we'll be able to kind of move forward in a better way. And so I think the Olympic team, making that Olympic team, was really the culmination of so many dreams, and more than anything else, this kind of confidence in my process and conviction that sometimes you have to go slower to go faster. My favorite Olympic moment would have to be from the Beijing Olympics at the opening ceremonies. The process of arriving at the opening ceremonies to arriving at the stadium was, I think, over 4 hours, a little arduous, a little tedious, but ultimately to arrive at the Beijing Olympic Stadium, and we kind of walked through this tunnel that went underneath the stadium and then kind of came out into this big crowd, lights and music and cheers, and the whole entire Team USA started, cheering and chanting USA together. It was such a sense of connectedness and pride, for my country, and really feeling like I was part of something so much greater, and really, yeah, this sense of like achievement and pride, I guess, would probably be the words I would use the most. But I've been in on 3 Olympic teams. All of the experiences have been so different and so unique. Each Olympics has its own personality, which is really fun to think about. They're these sort of living beings. But the thing I'm most proud of for my career is not any one achievement, but the consistency of that performance. And I think it speaks to this philosophy and this approach of, kind of establishing strong foundations, getting to the root of problems, and at the end of the day, finding the thing you love and working hard to achieve it.
Exactly what your parents raised you for, it sounds like. Look, we've got just 2 minutes left on the clock. So I think I want to call that an end to the interview and make sure that we've got a chance to say a proper goodbye. And certainly for me to express my gratitude for your taking the time to do this and the insight you shared, which will be very impactful for our audience.
Awesome, David. It's a pleasure to speak with you today. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share my story, and I hope we can have as many fit kids as possible out there.
Terrific. Thanks a lot.